You are lying. You stole my money. Mama Chica's voice rose, her eyes burning with rage. Adora's heart pounded. I didn't. Another slap. Silence! Mama Chica grabbed Adora by the arm and dragged her toward the small storage hut at the back of the compound. You will stay here until you confess, she hissed, shoving Adora inside before slamming the door shut and locking it. Darkness swallowed Adora whole. She banged on the door. Please, I didn't steal anything. But there was no answer. Days turned into weeks, and Adora grew weaker. She had lost all hope when she heard footsteps outside the hut. The door creaked open, and a figure slipped in. It was an old woman, her face lined with age and kindness. Adora, come with me, she whispered, helping Adora to her feet. Adora followed the mysterious woman deeper into the forest, unaware that she had just stepped into the hands of fate. The old woman, Naora, took Adora to her hut on the outskirts of the village. She fed her, bathed her, and gave her a soft mat to sleep on. Adora began to heal, but the scars of her past ran deep. Naora saw the pain in her eyes and knew that it would take time to erase. Days turned into weeks, and Adora grew stronger under Naora's care. She learned how to mix herbs to heal wounds, how to listen to the whispers of the wind, and how to sense danger before it arrived. But despite her newfound strength, Adora couldn't shake off the feeling that she was meant for more. She felt a restlessness in her soul, a calling that she couldn't ignore. After Adora left the village, strange misfortunes began to unfold in Itungwa. Crops withered, rivers became murky, and animals refused to drink from the streams. Then came the sickness. Children burned with fever, the elderly grew weak, and the once thriving village fell into despair. No sacrifice or ritual could stop it, and fear spread among the people. Whispers began to rise. This all started after Adora left. The sickness spread like wildfire. At first, it was only the weak and the old who fell ill, but soon even the strongest men and the healthiest children began to wither. The village was in chaos. Women wept in the marketplace. Men gathered in groups, whispering in hushed tones. The air was thick with fear. Mama Chica sat in her hut, her heart pounding. This is not normal, she muttered. The chief priest was acting strangely. He no longer walked with the confidence of a man who spoke with the gods. Instead, he avoided people, his eyes sunken, his skin covered in sweat. One night, as he prepared for a cleansing ritual, his hut caught fire. The villagers rushed to put it out, but it was too late. Everything burned to the ground. That was when the whispers started. The gods are angry. The land is cursed. We need answers. Desperation filled the village. They consulted more diviners, offered more sacrifices, prayed at every shrine, but nothing worked. The sickness only got worse. And then one night, the old blind seer spoke again. She sat outside her hut, rocking back and forth, her voice raspy and distant. She is coming. The villagers froze. The forgotten daughter is returning, and with her, the truth. Mama Chica felt her breath catch in her throat. No, it couldn't be. Adora was gone. She had to be gone. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Adora woke up gasping. She had seen something in her dream, a burning hut, a village drowning in sickness, and a voice whispering her name over and over again. She clutched her chest, her heart racing. It was time. She had to return to Itungwa. The past was calling her back, and she could no longer ignore it. The village of Itungwa had never been so quiet. The once bustling market was half empty. The air smelled of burnt offerings, desperate sacrifices to gods who had turned their backs. The sickness had worsened. Mama Chica paced in front of her hut, wringing her hands. She hadn't slept in days. Then, one fateful afternoon, a sound rippled through the village. The distant clang of a staff against the ground, the rhythmic thudding of feet. People turned their heads toward the village gates. And there she stood, Adora. But not the broken, frightened girl they had cast aside. No, this Adora stood tall, her back straight like a queen. Her skin glowed in the sunlight, her eyes sharp as a blade. She wore flowing garments, her hair adorned with golden beads. A staff rested in her grip, and behind her walked the old seer, the very woman the village had once ignored. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Women clutched their chests, men exchanged uneasy glances. Mama Chica stumbled backward. No, this can't be. The chief priest's breath hitched. His lips trembled as he whispered, "The gods, they." But before he could finish, Adora raised her hand, and the wind howled. The village square was packed. No one dared to speak. The elders sat stiffly, their fingers tapping their knees. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Adaora stood in the center, her gaze sweeping across familiar faces, the same people who had mocked her, shunned her, treated her like dirt. She inhaled deeply, then turned to the chief priest. "You told them I was cursed," her voice calm but sharp as a knife. "You told them my mother was a witch. You told them I was evil." The chief priest shifted uncomfortably. "We were mistaken," he muttered. Adora's eyes narrowed. "Mistaken? You destroyed my life. You took everything from me." Mama Chica stepped forward, her face pale. "Adora, please, silence." Adora's voice rose. "You who took me in and treated me like a slave. You who beat me and starved me. You who told me I was worthless." The villagers gasped. Mama Chica's eyes widened in fear. The old seer stepped forward. "The truth must be told," she said, her voice firm. "The gods are angry. They demand justice." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked on in confusion. Adaora raised her hands. "I have come to claim my rightful place," she declared. "I will not be silenced. I will not be ignored." The villagers erupted into chaos. Some cheered, while others jeered. The chief priest and Mama Chica exchanged fearful glances. But Adaora stood tall, her eyes blazing with determination. She knew that she had a long journey ahead of her, but she was ready. She was ready to fight for her rights, to claim her rightful place in the village. And as she stood there, the wind howling around her, the villagers began to realize that they had underestimated Adaora. They had thought her weak, but she was strong. They had thought her broken, but she was unbreakable. The village of Atungwa would never be the same again. Adaora had returned, and she would not be silenced. The old man flinched. I only did what the gods instructed." "Did you?" Adaora stepped forward. "Or did you and Mama Chica conspire to steal my birthright?" A murmur ran through the crowd. The chief priest's face turned pale. "Lies! This girl! Enough!" The old seer's voice cut through the air. She stepped beside Adaora and pointed a bony finger at the priest. "Your lies have poisoned this land for long enough." The sky darkened. The wind picked up. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Adaora turned to the crowd. "You all followed blindly. You let an innocent woman, my mother, be condemned. You let a child suffer because it was easier than questioning those who held power." The silence was deafening. Some villagers looked down, shame washing over them like a wave. Then, from the crowd, a voice called out, "She speaks the truth." Heads turned. It was Adaora's father. His eyes glistened with tears as he stepped forward. "I was blind," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I let my grief be manipulated. I let you suffer, my daughter." He dropped to his knees. "Forgive me." Adaora's heart clenched, but she did not move. She looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in years. Then she turned to her step-siblings. They had remained hidden in the crowd, but now, one by one, they stepped forward and knelt. "We were wrong," they whispered. "We were cruel. Please, Adaora." She stared at them, then spoke the words that sealed their fate. True change is shown in actions, not just words. The sky rumbled again. Adaora turned back to the chief priest and Mama Chica. "And you will answer to the gods." The old seer lifted her arms. "The spirits have spoken." A streak of lightning tore through the sky. Crack! A scream rang out as the bolt struck the ground between the priest and Mama Chica. They scrambled backward, terror in their eyes. Crack! Another bolt. The villagers gasped as the chief priest's body convulsed. His mouth opened in a silent cry before he collapsed, lifeless. Mama Chica's breath came in ragged gasps. She turned, ready to run. Crack! The lightning struck again. She crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from her still form. And then, silence. The wind stilled. The dark clouds began to part. Justice had been served. The celebration of Adaora Atungwa had seen many weddings, but none like this. The village square was transformed into a festival of color and laughter. Drums pounded rhythmically, feet stamped against the earth in joyous celebration. The air was filled with music, the scent of roasted meat, and the shimmer of golden fabric. At the center of it all stood Adaora, dressed in regal attire, beads cascading down her back. Beside her, the prince watched her with admiration. She had risen from the ashes. She had reclaimed her place. And now she would build a new future, not just for herself, but for her people. The prince took her hand. "Are you ready?" Adaora smiled. "I was born ready." As the village erupted in cheers, the drums echoed into the night. carrying the story of Adora, the forgotten daughter who returned, not for vengeance, but for justice. And justice, at last, had been served. End story by BigBima.